Okay, hi everyone. It is 1 p.m. Mountain Time, so we are going to go ahead and get started with the webinar. My name is Lori Peak, and I am the Principal Investigator for the National Science Foundation supported CONVERGE facility, which is headquartered at the Natural Hazard Center at the University of Colorado Boulder. CONVERGE is dedicated to connecting researchers across disciplines to advance ethical, interdisciplinary, convergence-oriented research that is problem-focused and solutions-based. On behalf of the entire team, it is our pleasure to welcome you to the CONVERGE webinar series. Today, during this brief 30-minute demonstration webinar, we are going to share the latest CONVERGE training module, which focuses on reciprocity in hazards and disaster research. While reciprocity is most often defined simply as giving back in the context of research, as you will hear today, there are many different approaches to thinking about and actually engaging in reciprocity in the context of hazards and disaster research. We are so excited to share this new module with all of you today, and we're very grateful that you have joined us. A few logistical items before proceeding any further. This webinar is being recorded, and the caption recording and slides will be posted on the CONVERGE website at converge.colorado.edu. Should you have any questions or comments during the webinar, we hope you use the Q&A box or the chat box. If we're unable to respond during this brief webinar today, we'll post written responses on the CONVERGE webinar webpage for your future reference. One of the major tasks of the CONVERGE initiative is to accelerate the education and training of a diverse next generation of hazards and disaster researchers and practitioners. We recognize that disaster research is often highly event-driven. In order for the field to progress, it is crucial that those new to this area of study have access to already existing research and an understanding of various methodological approaches and potential ethical challenges. To help, our CONVERGE research team, in partnership with researchers across the nation, have created a series of free online training modules that are specifically designed for students, emerging researchers and practitioners, and others new to the field who hope to quickly background themselves on key information. Thus far, we have released 9 modules focused on social vulnerability, disaster mental health, cultural competence, institutional review board procedures for extreme events research, conducting emotionally challenging research, understanding and ending gender-based violence in fieldwork, broader ethical considerations for hazards and disaster research, perishable data collection, and, as you will hear today, on the topic of reciprocity in hazards and disaster research. Over the coming years, we will continue to offer individual certificates for each of these training modules, while we're also building towards a credentialing system for hazards and disaster researchers to help ensure a minimum competence in the field and to help to democratize access to information through providing these free online resources. I'm also excited to share that thanks to our ongoing partnership with the International Association of Emergency Managers, or IAEM, that we now offer 1 contact hour of general management training for each of the completed CONVERGE training modules through this IAEM certification program. These training modules can also be used as a classroom assignment or competency requirement to ensure that students and others who are new to the field have a baseline level of knowledge and skills as they move forward with their efforts. To further encourage classroom adoption, we have partnered with educators to create the CONVERGE Training Modules Assignment Bank. As you will see on our website, we have several model assignments posted on the CONVERGE Training Modules page that are for classes both at the undergraduate as well as graduate levels. And so to all of the educators out there, if you have used the training modules in your class, we would welcome your contribution to the assignment bank. And we hope that you'll contact us at converge@colorado.edu if you have an assignment to share. And if you're a teacher, I hope you will go to that assignment bank and download some of the assignments and consider using these modules in your classroom. The training module that you will hear about today was made possible through supplemental support from the U.S. Geological Survey to the National Science Foundation. I am going to turn this over to Dr. Jonathan Gott now, who served as our program director and guide for this particular project. Jonathan, over to you.
Thank you so much, Lori. As Lori mentioned, my name is Jonathan Gott, and I serve as the program coordinator for the Landslide Hazards Program of the United States Geological Survey. I'm so pleased to be with you here today, and will provide a bit of background on the development of this module itself. To begin, it's worth noting that the seeds for this training module you're about to hear, as with many meaningful projects, are actually planted over many years of working in hazard-prone and disaster-affected areas. One of the questions that my colleagues and I at the USGS, as well as our academic partners, have often returned to is this: how can we, as researchers, ensure that we give back in ways that are both meaningful to the people who are involved in the research, as well as do our jobs on the ground? Over the last several years, we have had a chance to think deeply about that question in the context of ongoing collaboration between the University of Puerto Rico Mayagüez, the Natural Hazard Center, and the USGS. Since Hurricane Maria in 2017, we have been engaged in an ongoing community-based project in Puerto Rico focused on landslide hazard mitigation. As we developed the core principles for that project, we kept returning to the idea of reciprocity as integral to effective risk communication. It was from this insight, as well as those from my dear colleague Alice Panah's work on reciprocity, that we came together to partner with the Natural Hazard Center to develop this module. I'm excited not just to tell you about it, but to actually have seen how it functions on the ground. So without further ado, we are now going to turn the demonstration portion of this webinar. You will hear today from 3 talented researchers at the Department of Sociology at the University of Colorado at Boulder, including Jocelyn West, Jessica Austin, and Heather Champeau. All 3 are PhD students at the Department of Sociology at the University of Colorado Boulder and research assistants at the Natural Hazard Center and CONVERGE. Jocelyn, Jessica, and Heather served as the lead developers for this module, and you will hear from Jessica first today. Jessica, over to you.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Jonathan. As Jonathan mentioned, my name is Jessica Austin, and I worked on reviewing the literature and developing the narrative that appears in this module. Today, I am going to start by providing a broad definition for reciprocity. As we learned when we set out to develop this module, there is no single definition of reciprocity that is universally accepted, but many social scientists consider it a common feature of human societies. People tend to feel a sense of obligation to reciprocate when they receive gifts, invitations, or acts of service from others. While there are several perspectives on reciprocity that have been introduced over time by researchers in different disciplines, we define reciprocity in hazards and disaster research as an ongoing practice of reflection, relationship building, and exchange where researchers are obligated to work to produce mutual benefits for the people involved with or affected by the hazards and disaster research process. With that definition in mind, I'm going to provide an overview of the Reciprocity in Hazards and Disaster Research Training module. Before I begin, I want to acknowledge that this is a lot of text you are seeing here, so I first want to take a moment to orient you. What you can see right now is that the Reciprocity in Hazards and Disaster Research Training module is organized into 4 lessons. Background, what is reciprocity? Reciprocity in Hazards and Disaster Research, challenges and considerations for practicing reciprocity, and strategies and opportunities for reciprocity in research. Within each of these lessons are different topics which present interactive information that aims to achieve a specific set of learning objectives. For example, by the end of this module, participants should be able to define the concept of reciprocity and explain how it applies to research, specifically in hazards and disaster settings, provide examples of how researchers can practice reciprocity across the disaster cycle, anticipate the potential challenges associated with reciprocity in research, and consider the difficulties that may be unique to disaster contexts. describe research methods that can help foster reciprocity, and generate strategies to effectively practice reciprocity in hazards and disaster research. In the live module, on the right-hand side of the page, there is a tracking bar where you can monitor your progress as you move through the module lessons and topics. Once you have completed a topic, you can always go back and review it at a later time. I am now going to turn it over to Heather Champeau, who will show you a bit more of the module. Heather, over to you.
Thank you, Jessica. My name is Heather, and I'm going to show you some content, including some of the case studies and the examples that we present throughout the module. It's important to keep in mind that the unique context of each study in hazards and disaster research will determine how to engage in reciprocal relationships. But what even is reciprocity? Well, it's about valuing community and individual needs and priorities and encouraging others to do so as well. This can sometimes mean foregoing research in order to prioritize disaster response and recovery efforts, because the way that we do research should reflect the disaster that we're studying. Reciprocity is more than providing necessary or life-saving assistance after a disaster. It reflects the relationship a researcher has built with their participants. Keeping that in mind, reciprocity can and does occur on a spectrum. It can range from individual to individual exchanges to sharing resources and information with entire communities. Throughout the module, we provide case studies, examples, images, and infographics to illustrate content. In the challenges and considerations for practicing reciprocity lesson, we provide a series of case examples to illustrate some of the potential pitfalls and challenges that can happen when practicing reciprocity. For example, hazards and disaster researchers often find themselves in contexts where they lack appropriate cultural knowledge. As a result, cultural misunderstandings may occur when local values and ideas are different from the researcher's own, which may further amplify existing inequalities and vulnerabilities. To illustrate this, we provide a case study in the module where the researcher recalls the negative effects experienced by households in Madagascar when he only hired male research assistants, which was an action that reflected local tradition. We feature many case studies throughout the module to provide real-world examples and practicable guidance. In addition to the module's written and interactive visual content, we have compiled a wealth of additional and interactive resources helpful for practicing reciprocity in research. You'll find examples to click through, supportive checklists, and downloadable guidance highlighting best practices in reciprocity for disaster researchers. Don't forget to check out the Resources tab at the top right-hand corner of the screen, where we provide links to additional readings, tools, and other web resources that you can access. Importantly, you must be logged into the module to access these resources. So if you want them, you have to log in. All in all, this module takes about 30 to 60 minutes to complete. At the end of the module, you can take a 10-question quiz to assess what you've learned. If you're an instructor considering quizzes for classroom use, please know that we have a question bank that uses a random generator. So if you assign this to your students, they will not all get the same questions. If you get at least 8 out of 10 questions correct, you'll receive a certificate of completion with your name and the date. You can save the certificate as a PDF and can also access it at a later date through your training module account. They look great on CVs and resumes, y'all. And finally, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Jocelyn. Jocelyn is going to conduct a demonstration of the CONVERGE Reciprocity and Hazards and Disaster Research Training module. While Jocelyn is getting ready for the demonstration, I am going to add a link to register for the training modules into the chat. Jocelyn, take it away.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for that introduction, Heather. As Heather said, I'm Jocelyn, and I'm now going to walk you through a demonstration of the reciprocity training module. This module covers a number of important topics related to practicing reciprocity in research. And one lesson defines reciprocity and provides different examples of how researchers can practice it throughout the research process. Another lesson focuses on reciprocity in the specific context of hazards and disaster research. The third lesson highlights some of the challenges and considerations that can arise when practicing reciprocity. And the last lesson offers different strategies and opportunities for practicing reciprocity in research. For the sake of time, I'm just going to guide you through lesson 2 on reciprocity in hazards and disaster research. This lesson discusses why and how reciprocity matters in hazards and disaster research contexts. Specifically, it describes how reciprocity can help fulfill a moral and ethical responsibility, create trust, address power imbalances in researcher-community relationships, and enhance the relevance of research in the local context. The first topic in this lesson is fulfilling an ethical responsibility. For hazards and disaster researchers, practicing reciprocity in research might be considered part of a broader responsibility to conduct research in service to society. For example, researchers may want to acknowledge the assistance they receive from the various people who make hazards and disaster research possible, which includes both research participants and also anyone involved with or affected by research. The relationship between researchers and participants is simultaneously interdependent and unequal in that researchers often have more power and are driving the research agenda. By grounding one's participation in the relationship with a sense of moral responsibility, hazards and disaster researchers may acknowledge and address this imbalance by engaging in reciprocity. So understanding reciprocity as a moral responsibility can also help researchers navigate emotionally challenging situations and ethical dilemmas that can often arise in disaster research. The next topic in the lesson discusses increasing trust between researchers and disaster-affected individuals. After a major disaster, individuals who are trying to navigate the complicated web of emergency assistance, insurance claims, and reconstruction may perceive the influx of researchers in various ways. For example, community members may think the researchers are journalists, social workers, or part of government-led response efforts, which could lead to confusion, skepticism, or distrust. In other cases, overwhelmed disaster survivors may view research activities as disruptive or exploitative. So given the complex relationship between disaster survivors, representatives of outside aid agencies, and researchers, practicing reciprocity within communities is an important way for researchers to build trust and counter extractive practices. This not only ensures that the research is ethically grounded and prioritizes the concerns and needs of the affected community, but it can also improve and enrich the quality of data being collected. The next topic, addressing power imbalances, describes how a researcher's role as an expert, whether assumed by the researcher, their participants, or others, can create pitfalls that complicate attempts to reciprocate. This, quote, expert status for outside researchers can obscure insider expertise such as traditional ecological knowledge or lived experience, which may be vital to understanding a phenomenon or issue. Such power imbalances can also create tensions between community members and researchers, which can inhibit data collection or information sharing. Some researchers may seek to address power imbalances by claiming the role of a novice, a person new to the community who has arrived, ready to learn from locals, who has no ready-made solutions to offer. Practicing humility in the field acknowledges that researchers hold no exclusive right to the production of knowledge. Moreover, holding a deep awareness of potential individual and collective trauma is vital in disaster research due to its effect on people's sense of agency and power. Attention to this added vulnerability should help inform considerations around reciprocity in research. The last topic in this section is improving the relevance of research for disaster-affected people. Here we discuss how research projects often balance commitments to various stakeholders, including funding agencies, academic institutions, specific academic disciplines, and people and communities who host research projects or teams. Therefore, focusing on reciprocity from the start of a project can help ensure research is structured to be more relevant and useful to those whose lives may be affected by the data collection process or the research results. This can also help researchers to better understand and perhaps even prioritize the needs of the community. Taking a community-centered approach to research does not mean compromising the integrity of the research process. And ideally, it can strengthen it as communities are willing to share more information with those whom they see as trusted partners. Focusing on community needs may also help ensure that research is applied and used by those who need it most. At the end of each lesson, there's a brief knowledge check, which is a 2-question quiz to make sure the user is engaged and paying attention along the way. The knowledge check does not count towards the final quiz though. So for those of you who are joining in via your screen, you can see that there are 2 multiple choice questions. The first question asks, how does reciprocity help increase trust between researchers and disaster-affected communities? There are 4 responses. By prioritizing the concerns and needs of affected people, by protecting researchers from legal consequences, by elevating the status of researchers in the community, or by convincing the affected community to trust science. So I'm going to select the first option by prioritizing the concerns and needs of affected people. The second question asks you to complete the sentence, developing a research product to address the priorities of local leaders is an example of reciprocity that blank. The response options are, elevates the status of the researcher or research team, improves the relevance of research, exacerbates already existing power imbalances, and avoids conflict. So I'm going to select the second option so that the sentence reads, developing a research product to address the priorities of local leaders is an example of reciprocity that improves the relevance of research. To submit my responses, I press finish assessment, and I now have the option to view questions and check whether I got the answers correct. And as you can see, both my answers are correct. And I wanted to point out one more thing during this demonstration. As Heather discussed earlier, the module has a resources tab where additional resources are listed that can support researchers in practicing reciprocity. These resources include additional readings, checklists, toolkits, and other web resources related to practicing reciprocity in hazards and disaster research and research more generally. Each of these resources is also hyperlinked. So if I press the Beyond the IRB, an ethical toolkit for long-term disaster research link, it will bring me to a downloadable PDF of this resource. I also wanted to note that we have an annotated bibliography that includes all of the references that we have cited in the module, so you can do further reading. This concludes our demonstration today, and we're now going to return to the webinar slides. We hope that this webinar has been helpful to you today. And I'm now going to turn the slides over to Lindsay Davis, who manages the Earthquake Disaster Assistance Team on behalf of the U.S. Geological Survey and the U.S. Agency for International Development. Lindsay is a former team member at the Natural Hazard Center and has been a leading inspiration in our work in Puerto Rico that helped inspire the module you heard about today. So Lindsay, over to you.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn, for your work on this module and for the work of the entire Natural Hazard Center and CONVERGE team. As we bring this webinar to a close today, I just wanted to say a few words about our hopes for this module and its use moving forward. As Jonathan noted at the outset, we spent a lot of time thinking about reciprocity as a team. And in our work in Puerto Rico, we defined reciprocity as finding meaningful, tangible ways to give back to those who contribute to a project through a practice rooted in gratitude. Although reciprocity, as well as gratitude, are fundamental to the success of community-based research projects, prior to the release of this module, very little had been systematically written about this practice in the context of hazards and disaster research. Now that this module is live, we hope that students, emerging researchers, and practitioners will take advantage of this resource to learn more about reciprocity, what it is, how we can most effectively practice it in the field, and how we can identify strategies to overcome challenges and to create new opportunities for mutual learning in the field. We are so grateful for all of the work that went into developing this module and look forward to hearing from others as you complete the content. And of course, successfully pass your 10-question quiz. With that, Lori, over to you.
Thank you so much, Lindsay and Jonathan, for the support from the USGS to make this module possible. And of course, an enormous thanks to Jocelyn, Heather, Jessica, Candace, and Rachel for your many contributions to the content that was shared today. So before we close out today, a few brief announcements. We wanted to let you all know that we have 2 more CONVERGE training modules in progress. The next module to be released will focus on the topic of public health implications of disaster research and was made possible with the support of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to the National Science Foundation. And then we will follow that by a module on the topic of positionality in hazards and disaster research, meant to be a sister module to this reciprocity module that you heard about today. We will be hosting a brief demonstration webinar like this one for these forthcoming modules and the others that are part of the series as they become available. On behalf of our entire training modules team, and especially Candace and Rachel, we wanted to give our viewers a quick update on the modules and where we're at with registrations. So to date, we have 4,149 people, including students, academics, government officials, private sector professionals, and others who have registered for these training modules. And we hope after the webinar today, we might have 4,150 at least. Thus far, 1,577 people have completed the social vulnerability training module, which was the first that we released in the series. 917 have completed the disaster mental health module. 666 have completed cultural competence. 400 have completed the IRB module, and hundreds more have completed the remaining modules in the series. And we hope that those of you who are out there with us today will consider completing a module soon, and we look forward to seeing your name on a certificate. To contact us with any questions or suggestions that you may have, please email us at converge@colorado.edu. And to register for and to access the training modules, as well as the recording of the webinar today, you can find all of that on our website at converge@colorado.edu. We also hope you'll visit the CONVERGE and Natural Hazard Center websites to sign up for future updates. This module that you heard about today, again, would not have been possible without the support of the United States Geological Survey and the National Science Foundation, which has made this entire initiative possible. We also want to give special thanks to the entire team at the Natural Hazard Center and the CONVERGE facility. Every single person here has contributed to the module that you saw in some way. They either reviewed, tested, or otherwise supported this effort. And we're so grateful for our students and team members for the feedback that they've provided. And so with that, I am going to stop sharing the slides right now. And we have 2 minutes left in this webinar. And thank you so much, Erin, for the kind words in the chat. And I see that we have one question in the Q&A box. And if others have questions, please do go ahead and share those now. But Musaber actually asked, he said, thank you so much for the assignment bank, and really planning to hopefully use that assignment bank in future work. But then the question was, will it be possible to develop a matrix or a scale to assess how much my research actually was reciprocal for the community? And so I wonder, Jocelyn, Jessica, or Heather, in the module, in the final lesson, we talk about both future research in the area of reciprocity and also strategies for better engaging in reciprocal research. So given this great question that has been posed, would one of our 3 lead developers like to answer that? And Jocelyn, I see you have your camera on, so would you take that question, please? Thank you.
Sure, thank you for the question. And what Lori mentioned is that the final lesson in the module starts with some suggestions for what we hope to see other researchers do in terms of advancing reciprocity in research practices. And what you mentioned in your question as a tool sort of for tracking reciprocity practice and research is something that I haven't seen that exists yet. And I would be very excited if you or other researchers out there started to develop a way of creating metrics to keep track of reciprocity as a practice. And we also just want to encourage researchers, not just from the social sciences, but from the environmental sciences and beyond, to think about different types of reciprocity practices in their work, and to also find avenues to share what they're doing related to reciprocity. So thanks for that question.
Beautifully said, Jocelyn. And again, just amplifying the thanks for the question, and thank you to all of those who were able to log on to the webinar today. We're so grateful that you're here. And again, we hope that you will take the module and share the module with others. And most of all, we hope that you will adhere to these principles and ensure that the research is, as Jonathan said, making a difference to the people who participate in our studies and also making the research stronger on the ground. And so with that, thank you so much, everyone. We hope you have a beautiful day, and please remember to take care of yourself and others. Bye.